You may be wondering, like a lot of people, how to increase your income before retirement. In this video, I'm going to give you some ideas about that. I write about this and investing for almost 40 years over at retirecertain.com, what I've learned on my journey. And over the past 15 years, creating alternative income streams after we sort of stumbled into early retirement. So in this video, I want to share with you some thoughts on how you can increase income before retirement. Because if you can get something going before you decide to retire, then it's so much easier to ease into retirement. And some of these things can be passive, where they don't require a lot of work, because I know if you're still working, you probably don't have the time. Although a lot of people do sort of commit to spending several hours a week to get some things going. But having said that, you may not have the time at all. You may be working really hard, long hours still in your job. So what can you get going? Sometimes it's just about educating yourself and seeing what else is out there. So I'm going to throw out some things. And it's sort of a trade-off really between capital, how much of your savings, I call that capital, you want to use to create this income before you retire, versus your time. Okay, so you can spend a lot of time and not have to use any capital, or you can use kind of a lot of capital and not have to spend very much time at all. So let me get going with this. The very first thing I want to share with you is as I mentioned, that perspective around capital. So that's sort of the starting point for deciding the best income stream, for you to get going before retirement. So think about, how much capital do I have to apply toward this new income stream? And I did a whole series, it was actually a challenge, living off investments, where I talk about this more, and actually there's a handout where you can fill it out, and it takes you step by step, seeing how much income you need to generate. So knowing how much you need to generate before you retire, so that you can fill that gap between the income you already have coming in, whether that's Social Security, whether that's, maybe you have some real estate rentals, maybe you have dividend income, whatever it is, maybe you're planning on a retirement withdrawal plan, an annuity, whatever it is you have going on. So knowing what that difference is, and knowing how much capital you want to use toward creating this income stream, is kind of the foundational piece. Now I'm going to throw out some ideas having said that, okay? So the very first thing is the most obvious thing in the world, and it's dividend income. But dividend income, a lot of people just kind of go, well, I get maybe 2%, or, maybe if you're in a fund that focuses on dividend income, then maybe you're getting 3% or 4%. It's not very much, right? Especially when we think about inflation is, well, around 2%, it varies. So there's not a lot of income that you can get from these funds. Now, what I'm going to suggest is you look at some things that are a little outside mainstream. They're a little more alternative. There are some financial advisors that specialize in investing in dividend stocks for you. I read about an incredible advisor I was very impressed with in Barron's some time ago, that gets about 5% for her retired clients, and then she shoots for another 3% in growth. Okay, but having that steady income from stock dividends, and it's passive, right? You don't have to do any work beyond the initial research. So this is something you can get going before you retire, whether that's the research to say, how can I go about doing this? Now, I threw out a financial advisor strategy that I read about because I'm a nerd, and on the weekends that I like to read about that. But other ideas might be a great newsletter that focuses on dividend stocks or income strategies from things that are very similar to dividends. Another strategy might be to look at some other funds that are a little more focused on income, that are a little more alternative. Some of them throw in covered call writing to add another % or two a year, maybe 2% a year, something like that. And then the other idea for increasing your dividend income before retirement might be that you decide you really like stock analysis and you want to get into analyzing stocks and looking at things like AT&T, a really popular, considered very safe, high yield. It's gone down, the yield has gone down a bit, right, as of this recording because it's been so popular. But some stocks like that by making up your own portfolio, and that's something you can tiptoe into before retirement that doesn't take a lot of work because, sure, the initial research is a lot, especially if you're choosing to pick individual stocks versus hiring an advisor that specializes in income, stock dividend income perhaps, or funds or something like that. It is more work to pick those stocks. But having said that, once you get a solid portfolio, dividend income is a wonderful passive income. Now, I've got to stop and say, that I really think it's super, super important, if you see my other videos, to look at the cycles before you throw all your money into the stock market and load up on dividend stocks, right? Because if we're, 10 years into a bull market, it's a time for a little more risk than if we've just come out of a bear market, right? It seems counterintuitive, right? It seems the opposite, but that's so important. So I've got to say that because, gosh, it's so important to understand that and look at the P ratio and look at the valuations before you buy, stocks at all, any stocks, including dividend stocks. Unless you just don't care. You don't care if you buy at high valuations because you're strictly doing this based on the income that it's going to generate. And I think that's a hard thing because it's hard to see our net worth drop, right, during bear market. So I've done other videos on that. Take a look. It's super important to me that I mention that to you before I even think about mentioning dividend stocks. I know I did say that after, but anyway, it's super important. Okay, the next thing I want to mention is, let me look at my list. I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. Funds, newsletters, advisors. Okay, the next thing that does require capital and a little more work, especially initially, is real estate rentals. But this is something that you can get going, that you have the income from once you retire. And it does take time. We bought some real estate rentals when we first started this whole income stream adventure, which you may have read about. We started with trying to buy an existing brick and mortar business, but it was just so expensive and so risky. And then we did some oil and gas stuff. And then we looked at real estate rentals because that's what everybody does, right? So having said that, real estate rentals can be, wonderful income sources if they cash flow. So it's super, super important that the numbers work though. So the initial research will show you and lead you to properties and let you know if this works for you. It does take some capital, although there is some leverage involved because you can finance at least, a good chunk of it, right? And then going back to what I said about stocks, I also think it's super important to look at where we are in the cycle, right? Real estate was so cheap in 2010 still, right? Even 2011. And so after real estate's been going up in value for many years, it's harder to find real estate investments that cash flow. But it can be done. There are unusual situations. We found an unusual situation in the mid 2000s when real estate was not cheap, so it can be done. So that's the second suggestion or idea. I don't make really suggestions. I just sort of talk about what we've done in my experience. So I'm not advising you in any way. You're responsible for your own money and your own investments. The next few things I want to mention really don't require any capital, or they require almost no capital. And that's what's so great about this. And the first one I'll mention is to start a consulting business. Easy. So much by the time you're ready to retire, right? So figure out what it is that you help people with or you can help people with. get some business cards printed up, you know, $25, right? Hand them out to friends, test out your idea. I've done another whole video on that, I think. And so starting a consulting business can be just a really easy side income stream to get going before retirement. You could do 1 or 2 clients, right? And segue into it and get some practice and see what you really love helping people with. So that's another idea. The next idea I want to share with you is starting an online business. You know, holy cow, the amount of income potential for an online business versus something like stocks, the comparison there with the earnings that are possible versus the capital is just astounding. And I think we're still in incredible a time of opportunity for that. So you can start an online business, you can buy an online business, they're still so cheap relative to stocks, which is probably another whole video. But think about the online space. It's still a bargain. You can reach a global market for very little money. And then the last area I want to mention, there's so many. It was hard for me to not make this too long. But the last one I do want to mention, because it's just so easy, is something like an Airbnb. If you have a garage apartment or you've got a big house still and your kids have moved out, or especially if you have a separate living area, an Airbnb can make so much sense for generating some extra income before you retire, right? And you get that income stream set up. You could even do 2 or 3 of these different income streams before you retire, and what a huge difference, right? Because establishing an income stream that generates just an extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month is like having a significantly higher amount of money saved for your retirement account. So that's what I wanted to share with you in this video, these 5 ways. Come see me at retirecertain.com. Subscribe to my channel if you like my videos. Thanks for watching.